buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello and good morning to you, my friends. It is just another beautiful day here in paradise. A brisk and crisp 3 degrees below zero at the old radio ranch. And yeah, ooh, man, what a weekend. Cold, crisp, and clear. That's what we've got. And then this week, rain. No, I'm not I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Blizzard warning is in effect for the Matsu Valley right now. With blowing winds and wind gusts up to 75 miles an hour. Localized blizzard conditions with drifting snow likely from this morning at 9 a.m. through 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So it's like snow, blizzard, wind, rain, and more snow. Chance of rain. Got to be 32 degrees on Tuesday, and then again highs near 32 with rain on Thanksgiving Day, and highs of 39 on Thanksgiving Day. So, but it cannot make up its mind. Cannot make up its mind here as to what's going on here. It's wow. It's just everything going on here around. So anyway, welcome to the program for Monday. It's the short week. It's Thanksgiving week. Did you get your turkey yet? We got everything but the turkey. I have to go get the turkey today or tomorrow, but not Wednesday. I'm not going to the grocery store on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. That is taking your life into your own hands for sure. Getting that young, plump, fresh butterball turkey. That's the answer. The young, fresh butterball. That's if you want a good turkey, that's the one you get. So go, you better do it. You better go get it done. It's by the way, did you notice the increase in prices on everything? I haven't been to the grocery store in a while. Man, pumpkin, cranberries, a handful of other things, 30% higher than they were in previous years. I just saw a report, and then I went to the store and confirmed it for myself. 30% increase in pumpkin and cranberries, of all things. I just, wow. Anyway. Okay, so today on the program, what are we going to do? Today we're talking education. In hour 2, it's going to be whatever. It's going to be whatever. Tomorrow it's going to be full. We got Brad Keithley, Chris Story. On Wednesday, we're going to have, I think, Mike Shower join us. Not 100% sure yet, but also working on another guest. And we're going to do some firearm stuff on Wednesday because there is no Firearms Friday this week. We're on vacation. Remember, it's going to be gone. We're going to be off on Thursday and Friday, and then we'll be back again on Monday. And then it's on the countdown to Christmas, my friends, where I will be taking a huge chunk off between Christmas and New Year's. I will be on vacation. So because I just can't stand looking at myself anymore on the video. Can't do it. You just can't do it anymore. But today it's education all day in hour one with Sarah Montalbano. God, I love saying that. Montalbano. She's going to be joining us from the Alaska Policy Forum. And we're going to talk about how it's not how much money you spend on education. It's where you spend it that's important. She's got a new article up right now on over at the Policy Forum about that. And we're going to jump into that. Well, hell, let's just do it right now. Let's just jump in right now, see what's going on. We're going to check her for a recipe too, remember, because the recipe contest is still going on. So we're going to make sure we check her for her favorite holiday recipe. She's going to have to give it up before she leaves the program this morning. Sarah Montalbano joins us right now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
You know, it's another beautiful day in paradise. What more could you ask for? It's 2 below zero and crisp and cold, and I hate this place. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. How about yourself? You doing well? Ready for Turkey Day?
Oh yeah, I'm prepared. I have bought all of my groceries, and yeah, I've noticed that inflation's taken a bite out of my budget this year.
I was looking at it going like, what? Because I'd read the story like last week, and I'm like, oh yeah, right. And then I go to the store, and I'm like, wait a second, that is holy cow, yeah, that the meal that used to cost you $150, $180 is now $250. I mean, it's just it's not an easy thing. I buy for a lot of people, folks. So just in case you're freaked out about that number, when you have a Thanksgiving dinner for 7 people, that's what you get. All right, well, let's get started here, Sarah. First of all, thank you for coming on the program. It's always good. Second of all, you've got this great piece up which talks about not necessarily the quantity of dollars, but where you put them. So let's get started on this, because you got some interesting graphs and some discussions, and this is some of the stuff that you and I have talked about over the past, especially when we start talking about things like administrative overhead and where are the dollars going. So give us the kickstart the rundown here for us. What's going on?
Absolutely. This discussion is going to fall back on a lot of the things we've talked about before, but I really think it's important to remind everyone that increasing education spending does not necessarily lead to the better outcomes that we would expect with just putting more money into the pot. And so in this article, I look at the Edunomics Lab at Georgetown University, a really well-respected source that I find myself going to a lot. And they have a very useful chart of fiscal year 2019, so a couple years back. And they plot individual schools in Alaska. The per pupil spending is on the horizontal axis. So when you go left to right, you're increasing your spending. And on the vertical axis, you have the percentage of students who are proficient on our statewide exam, the Alaska System of Academic Readiness. And what we see is not what you would expect with the kind of assumptions we've built into the system. If those assumptions were true, we would expect better outcomes as funding increases, right? And what we actually see is the opposite, that more funding is leading to more funding is correlated with worse outcomes. There's a lot of things to unpack in this graph, but I just want to start with the basic that this assumption is not moving in the direction that we would expect.
No, I mean, especially when you start looking at the overhead and the overall expenditure, and then the hue and cry, what we're hearing from the news media and from some of the politicos and the talking heads is, oh, we're just not doing enough. We're just not doing enough. But I mean, even at the average of $20,000 per student, which is one of the higher ones in the nation, I mean, we're we're up there in the top 4 or 5. We're still in the bottom when it comes down to it. So as you said, let's dive into it and take a look at what is going on a school, per district, per school, student basis. And what it shows is that, that the lack of money is not necessarily the problem. It's how the money is spent. And you come up with some pretty startling numbers when it's all said and done.
I think so. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting scenario here. There's obviously some things like growth in administration that we've talked about. The other thing we haven't talked about very much are unfunded pension liabilities, which is, you have promised a certain amount in retirement funds to your teachers as they retire. And in a lot of states, unfunded liabilities, including Alaska's pensions are somewhat unfunded, but not as bad as they were. But when the funding that you're adding is going back towards those back promises, that's obviously not going to make as much of a difference as talking about,
Pensions
initiatives that are
are
working.
unfunded.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, we lost your audio there for a minute. So we lost your audio there for a minute. So you're saying the unfunded pension liabilities is not something that we're talking about in general. So what were the thoughts on the unfunded liabilities? We lost you there for a second.
I'm so sorry. Let me know if that happens again. What I was saying about unfunded liabilities is that, this is a bucket of money that you've promised to teachers for the retirement. And so this current funding, maybe if it's going into those unfunded liabilities, that's less valuable from a classroom perspective than being able to actually put it to the initiatives and the things that are working.
Because that's what we're hearing a lot of. Well, if these teachers had a better salary, if they had better benefits, if they were fully funded, then they'd stick around and they'd do all this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily collate down to the bottom line. And in fact, some of the studies have shown that the teachers don't necessarily care about that as much as many other things. Now, there used to be a mandate. There used to be a mandate that 70% of the dollars from, like, for example, the BSA used to have to go into the classroom. But at some point, they submarined that. It's gone. And so now we're not seeing that 70% going into the classroom. And is that essentially part of the problem here?
I would be reluctant to say causally, because I think a lot of other states see this problem and they have never necessarily had that kind of term. What I would say is that we can't simply just trust that you drop in this pile of money and that it's getting used in the most efficient ways. And that's exactly what a fellow at the Hoover Institution, I took a quote from him for this article because I really loved it. You can't just drop in a pile of money and expect good performance to come out. And so when we look at the numbers here, the schools that are doing more with less, those that are spending under $10,000 per student in fiscal year 19, those are predominantly, exclusively correspondence schools and charter schools. And they are doing just as well, getting just as near or above the average as the rest of the schools that are spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 per student.
Yeah, and in fact, you said at one point in the article, you said that in fact some of the highest academic scores are for schools that are spending less than $10,000, which are predominantly the correspondence schools and the charter schools and things like that. So it's not necessarily a moneyed issue per se, although that is the mantra that we've been given by the public, by the media, by the politicians, etc., is that the money is the entire issue at this point.
Absolutely. And there's being very little focus on, how these funds can actually be used to better serve students. That's just the debate is hinging on the dollar amount right now. And I think that's a mistake for us in our public discourse to think about it only in those terms. We need to think about what's working. We have models like charter schools and correspondence schools and a lot of public schools doing very, very well. And we need to look to them to see what they're doing and how we can emulate it and make the most bang for your buck that way.
Well, and that's been my advocation for a long time. And in fact, not just here in the state, I've said, let's look at what other places are doing. And they actually did that. I mean, that was the whole point of this Read by 9 program, right? This came out of Florida originally. And you'd think, oh, great, a program that worked. There won't be any pushback on this. And then the next thing you know, everybody and their mother's banging the drum about how this is just, this leaves people behind. This is great. Wait. We've seen something that works. We're trying to bring it online and everybody's fighting against it. What's the holdup?
Yeah, I think Read by 9 is a really perfect example of this because it's incredible that something as simple as teaching children how to read the right way and making sure that they're not being pulled behind. It's amazing how that's become a partisan issue. I think Florida has done this for 2 decades. They're seeing the results. Mississippi has jumped up incredibly in the NAEP numbers, and it's remarkable to me that this is being treated so suspiciously. It's a really fantastic program, and we can learn from the best of other states as long as we're willing to listen.
Sarah Montalbano is our guest with the Alaska Policy Forum. We are up against the break, so we're going to shake down Sarah for some holiday recipes during the break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk more about education. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
We should say beard power and red-headed power. That's what's driving the show today, is the power. So yeah, Sarah, the numbers, and this chart is this is an interactive chart, which I love. For those of you who don't, I just posted the link up in the chat room here. A few comments. I guess I'll post it again because it's already rolled off my screen. You can go ahead and follow the link over to her article at the Alaska Policy Forum. And this is an interactive graph, which, I mean, you could permutate any which way you want. It basically shows you everything. You could even type in the district name, the school, I mean, everything else. There's lots of great information here. And it shows you exactly what, that some of the biggest responses and some of the biggest gains are in, again, charter and correspondence, and the fact that all the green is in the lower category. The higher we spend, it seems like the less return we get in the long run.
Absolutely. It's not causal necessarily. There's a lot of other factors at play. But I think if we were to see a relationship with more funding improving outcomes, we would see that at least with some of these schools. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule. There's plenty of high performers in the high funding category. But, as a general rule, the line is sloping down. And I think that's just a really important fact to have here. You can go look up your school. You can look at the different correlations between the size of the school and the amount of funding and their outcomes. But it's a really cool graph. And I wish I could take credit for it. But that's the Edunomics Lab right there.
The Edunomics Lab, like education. Edunomics Lab at which university is it again?
Georgetown University.
Georgetown University. So it's a great opportunity here. Sarah, we're doing I don't want to get too far afield here. We're doing a big holiday recipe contest for the show, where if you put your favorite holiday recipe up there, you get a chance to win a bag of beard curler coffee and a coffee mug from the show, which I should just send you anyway because you've been on the show so much. But so what's one of your favorite? What's grandma's favorite recipe or grandpa's favorite recipe that you used to cook all the time for the holidays that you take on with you? What's your tradition?
I'm so excited you asked me that. My dad's pecan recipe is my favorite. I make it for pretty much every holiday that I have an excuse for. And what he does differently, there's a pinch of salt. So it cuts the cloying sweetness that pecan pies often have. And he arranges the pecans on the top as well. So there's some crushed pecans in the filling, and then there's a circle of pecans all over the top. And it's just so much fun to make, and they're so beautiful.
Shut up and take my money. That's what I'm saying. Shut up and take my money. I expect one now. That's the thing. I put my grandmother's. My grandmother makes a pumpkin pie. Most pumpkin pies are like condensed and real thick and everything else. Yeah. She makes a pumpkin pie it's chiffoned. It's like this. It's puffy when it's all done. It's like this thick and it's creamy and it's the best pumpkin pie ever, period. So I put that recipe up, but you should post your recipe up. You should post your dad's pecan pie recipe up and see what people say. I think Bill is still ahead right now. He was doing the candied bourbon popcorn.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That
there's some
sounds
great.
good too.
There was some bread pudding recipes. There was some. I think somebody did a Brussels sprout recipe or something. Anyway, there's some really great recipes over there. So, I'm looking forward to it. We always do the bacon Brussels sprouts and the green bean casserole with the bacon and the mushrooms and so good. Last Christmas I did my dad's. Maybe it was the year before. I posted my dad's brown sugar and bourbon ham, which is my dad does that every year. We do that every year. In fact, we, like you, pretty much if I can get away with it, I do it for Christmas and I do it for New Year, and then sometimes I do it for Easter too, just because you got to have that ham. So it's a delicious thing. All right, well, we're 20 seconds out. We're going to continue this discussion with Sarah, and then we're going to give her the last segment to talk about anything new she's working on. Or just general education, blah, blah, whatever we got going on. So we're going to continue on here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I am not a pain in the... Well, okay, I am. But, it's fine. Doc says it's just my personality. Let's continue ahead here. We're talking with Sarah Montalbano, who is education analyst for the Alaska Policy Forum. We're talking about her latest piece on how it's not how much we spend. Say that 5 times fast. It's where we spend it. It's not how much we spend. It's how we spend it that makes the big difference. And so, Sarah, we've talked about the schools that are spending an enormous amount of money and those that are spending a smaller amount. I love how the graph, by the way, doesn't even encapsulate, because it stops at $40,000 per student. And we've got some districts that are spending $80,000, $90,000 per student. So they fall completely off the graph. But so where are they spending it? Where are they spending the money that's making the difference for these students, especially when we're talking about the correspondence and the charter schools, where for $10,000 or less, they're doing better than kids that are getting 4 times that much?
That's a great question. I would say that the majority, and in fact, somewhere near the 80 and 90% mark of funds for a school district are spent on staff and personnel. Now, that doesn't separate out, staff that are teaching and staff that maybe are principals or counselors or, contracted for food service, et cetera, et cetera. But what we see there is these personnel costs are the main issue here. And so the Georgetown Edunomics Lab has been warning for quite a while about this fiscal cliff that districts are coming towards at the end of fiscal year 2024 when these American Rescue Plan funds run out. And the reason they're talking about this is because a lot of what districts have done nationwide, not just here in Alaska, are hire extra teachers and personnel that are ongoing costs. And so instead of doing things that are one-time only funding for maybe a summer program to catch kids back up from their learning loss from the pandemic, a lot of schools have used this to either fund existing positions or add new teachers. And so they're coming up on this situation where they're not going to be able to fund the teachers that they have. And so that's, I think, what we're seeing a large part nationwide is also just the recognition that, hey, this money is running out and we have too many people to support.
This reminds me of an old axiom where it said, piss poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part, right? I mean, that's what we've seen. You've got one-time funding, and instead of spending it on one-time expenditures, you're spending it on ongoing expenditures. You, of course, are going to have a crisis when that money runs out, because you're not going to have any more of it. I mean, these are supposed to be educators. These are supposed to be smart people. What genius? I mean, I'm not that smart. I barely graduated high school. How in the world do these people look at that and go, we should spend this on salaries? That'll make sense. I mean, who thought that was a good idea? And like you said, it's not just Alaska. It's going on across the country.
Yeah, and it feeds into to this discussion of teacher shortages. And a lot of it is not that we are suddenly training fewer teachers in teachers colleges across the US, but that we had this weird hiring boom with these pandemic funds. And now, we can't hire all these teachers. There's a glut, but somehow we have this shortage at the same time. So I really think it's an interesting topic. That's predominantly what districts are spending on. But we've talked before too about, administrative costs, that some of these people are obviously administrative personnel. And that there's, all these unfunded liabilities that are coming through for the defined contribution plans and all these pension systems. So there's a lot to fund. There's not all that much money that they're not already have it earmarked. So it's a really interesting situation here. But adding more funds, just baseline bucket, is not going to show in the student achievements unless it's really in some targeted initiatives.
Well, and we've talked about in the past, you've done the analysis of the, like, for example, administrative overhead across the state, and some districts have 3, 4, even almost 5 administrators for every school teacher. And if the job here is about teaching children, and I mean, again, I'm old, I'm not that old, but 35, 40 years ago when I was in school, that you didn't have 15 counselors and administrators and guidance. It was mostly teachers with a handful of administrative staff to make sure things run smoothly. And that seems to have exploded, across the country in the last 30 years and changed. I mean, that has inverted. One graph is going up and the other graph is going down, where you've got teachers in the classroom versus administrative overhead. And it's become part of this kind of, I guess, industrial complex, right?
Yeah, I would say, as I've said before on this program, I'll say it again. I think schools are trying to do so much that is not necessarily the purpose of a school. We have all of these counseling activities and electives, and it's like the main purpose of the education, at least that most people can agree upon, is getting your reading, writing, and arithmetic to a certain baseline level so that you are able to go out into the workforce and go live a successful life. Everyone uses reading, it's part of just being a successful person in the basic sense of, able to support yourself. So I really do think schools have broadened their focus so much that they're not able to do anything particularly well.
Right. Again, we're talking with Sarah Montalbano about this latest piece that she just wrote over at the Alaska Policy Forum, taking a look at information from Georgetown University, the Edunomics Lab there, which basically is showing that it's not necessarily how much we spend, it's how we spend it. Again, talking about it. And you just hit on that number. I want to go back to that number again, Sarah, where you said 70% of the dollars being spent are being consumed by overhead at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say, even farther than that, it's 80-90% in a lot of places are on personnel alone. We're not talking about materials. We're just talking about the teacher's time, administrators' time, salaries, benefits, etc. So that is the main bucket that all of these things are being spent on. And if we want to be able to pay our teachers well, we need to be thinking about the ways that this maybe doesn't make sense. Like, we have a lot of opportunities to rethink how schooling's done, and I'm disappointed that after the pandemic, traditional public schools have gone back to what they've been doing, with maybe a little more technology in the classroom, a little more gadgetry, but we're not like thinking about the structure of school days differently.
Right. Well, of course, we're still hearing stories about how teachers don't have enough pencils or paper or crayons or whatever it is. We hear the sob story, oh, they're going into their own pockets to buy supplies and things like that. And first of all, that should never happen. That should be first call on everything. But as you said, they had an opportunity, a prime opportunity during the pandemic to take a look at what was working and what wasn't. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier. We look at the things that work and the things that don't. And yet even the things that have worked in other places, like the Read by 9, have all of a sudden become a cultural flashpoint. They become controversial when all they were was a way to get kids to read by 9. I mean, I don't understand how it could be so difficult. Anthony says, I'm curious, do you think that the budget bloat, let me get over here. Do you think that the budget bloat of the educational system is the byproduct of a more is better mentality caused by dismal school scores, even though most of us know it's a quality, not quantity issue? And I think that's a great question, Sarah.
It's fantastic, and I was gonna say there's some fantastic questions coming in through the audience that I would love to answer. What I think is, yeah, there is a lot of this more is better mentality, and I think, it's really interesting how technologies are introduced in the classroom. Just as an example, books were a technology that were introduced in the classroom, and they revolutionized things because you didn't have to have a teacher lecturing at you to learn the material. You could read the book and then come to get applications with your teacher. And I think there's just so much of that where we are charging forward with this more is better mentality, more funding, more laptops, more iPads, something is more. And we're not thinking about thoughtful ways to use it. We're not thinking about how to make the best use of these funds. Or are those best spent on, a new classroom cart of iPads? Or maybe we should be thinking about, gifted and talented programs, or maybe some targeted reading initiatives for those students that are really struggling. There's all sorts of options, and there's always trade-offs to all of them. But that is the problem, is we're not treating these funds like finite resources. We need to be
Right.
thinking about the trade-offs of these things.
Well, and we're not doing well, as we just pointed out. We're not doing well with even the excess or the extra funds that we get. Spending them on reoccurring costs instead of one-time costs. It's a frustrating thing, and I think you're nailing it there. This is something that I've advocated for years: is that something is fundamentally flawed or broken in the current educational model. We don't continue. You can't continue to have the lowest performance in the country, 48th, 49th out of 50. And then the country as a whole, you can't have some dismal performance. We spend more than almost any other industrialized nation on education, and yet we're in the middle lower of the pack internationally against other countries, as Western nations. And you can't keep doing that and say, well, it's just because we're not spending enough. It's obviously demonstrably not true. We're spending more than ever, and yet something is not working. And so somebody has got to admit and look themselves in the mirror and say, something's broken, and we need to figure out what it is. And we should be using the grocery store method with these other countries. I'm not saying we advocate for like what Germany does, where they choose a path for a kid when they're still in grade school or something, but we can use at least some of it as examples and guidelines. How do we adapt some of that to a freer system like we have here? But no, it's like we keep wanting to do the same thing over and over again and just asking for more money.
I agree. And I think there's so many issues with education that, it's not geared, and we've discussed this before, but it's not geared towards the kind of jobs and careers that students want these days and what our economy is turning into. What we have in the traditional public school system was built for people who wanted to be factory workers or had to be factory workers. And, a lot of those skills are, memorizing complex instructions and, being able to stand and sit for long periods of time. And that's just not the kind of thing we're valuing today. We value critical thinking. We value, creativity and imagination. And I don't think our school system is built for that.
Well, and that's the thing. Critical thinking is something that we're not even, going back to a classical education of the triumvirate, logic, rhetoric, reason, those kind of things. We should be going back to those things because that's gives them the opportunity to assess and critically understand things instead of, reading by rote and like you said, memorization of certain things, and instead of just giving them the basic foundation and formula, like you said, they're trying to spread things out and teach a lot more than what they ever, what these kids will ever use or need in that regard, instead of teaching them the idea of being able to analyze, have critical thought, accurate thinking, and then move on from there. And they've missed the golden opportunity here.
Absolutely.
It's pretty astonishing. Okay, we're up against she just agrees with me. I'm bringing her on from now on. All she does is agree with me. It's amazing stuff. Sarah Montalbano is our guest. In the next segment, we're going to give her some free reign, and she's going to be able to tell us Some of the other things she's working on, what other thoughts she has on this or anything else. We're going to be back with more in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Did not want to go to commercial break. Okay. All right, we're there. Let's answer some questions in the chat room. Sarah said she wanted to answer some of them. You could choose a couple that you want, Sarah, but let me ask this one here. Sarah, didn't you report that administrative salaries increased substantially compared to classroom teachers? It would be helpful to break down the percentage of funds spent on personnel into categories such as administration, classified, and certified classroom teachers. I'll leave that up to Sarah. Didn't you talk about that before?
I think I have. The numbers are not coming easily to my mind right now, but this is why I love talking to all you, because you give me great ideas for analyses to perform in the future. Yeah, we do see that administrator salaries have increased. At least, no, the number of administrators have increased. That is what is publicly available data from the National Center for Education Statistics. I believe teachers declined about 8%. The number of teachers declined about 8%, and administrators increased almost double that, if I'm recalling that correctly. And so just looking at the sheer balance of things, you can see that, the number of administrators is increasing. And in general, yeah, administrators are being paid more than teachers, and we're seeing, commensurate salary increases year to year to year. And so, yeah, I would say that's a safe assumption, but I would love to see some more breakdowns of funding, and perhaps I'll be the one to do that.
There you go. You got some homework. Next time you have on, you can give us the breakdown as to what everybody's making. What else? What else did you see here that you said you wanted to answer? Was there anything that stood out for you here? Hit me with it.
Yeah, there's a great question here. Sarah M., can one say that there is a correlation between parent involvement and student achievement? Involved parents seem to have their kids in charter/alternative schools. And the first thing I would note on that is it's really interesting to look at studies of charter school performance versus traditional public school performance. And in my last piece, charter schools are public schools. We looked at this a little bit, and the fascinating thing is that when you pull from the same place and you say, okay, here are the kids going to the traditional public school that applied to be in a charter school but lost the lottery, the real measure of that is, these parents cared enough to apply for the lottery. And some of them got in and some of them didn't, but they all kind of have that same level of parental involvement. And even when that is true, we see that the charter school students do better even than their traditional public school peers who ended up going to that public school. And so it doesn't necessarily come down to the parental involvement of these models, although I'm sure that it helps. There's still some fundamental differences in the curriculum for charter schools that seems to make a difference.
And I think that's important. We talk about, how do we get more parental involvement? And I don't know. I mean, that's a broader societal question. But sure, it's important. And it will make some difference. But again, I think it has more to do at this point with the teaching model than anything else. Even Harold, our resident naysayer, says the majority. Whoops, nope, that's not the one that I wanted. Where was it? It was just right here, because he basically lines it out and says, "There you go. Here it is." When your school maintenance department is greater than your teacher aide staff and teachers have 10-year-old supplies, it's a jobs program and not a viable school. Just saying. And that's, I think, a lot of what's happening. Is a lot of this money is getting consumed by the overhead, and the overhead is self-serving in and of itself. It doesn't make it evil. It's just the nature of it. And so it continues to grow, and we keep squeezing on the one thing where it can get it from, which is from the classroom at this point. Why wouldn't we be pointing that out and looking at that? I mean, why, again, you can look at those inverse statistics and see that the number of administrators to each teacher that number has continued to climb. You've documented it. I mean, it started out down here, and all of a sudden it's just creeping up and up and up. And when you have that many cooks and not enough, too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, you don't have enough to feed the kids anymore. That's the big problem.
Yes, and I would love it if we would see some really innovative models for, teaching differently. I think I've discussed on this program before. There's a charter school in New York City that got rid of its administrators, and all the teachers are taking on some different administrative duties, and they're able to get their starting salary up to about $120,000, all because the principal is also the third grade math teacher and things like that. So I would love to see some interesting ways to solve this problem. I think there's also different ways we could structure the teaching profession. Teachers don't need to be spending all their time making copies and, supervising the lunchroom and things that don't actually play to their expertise. And so, thinking about things differently, I think is really important. And traditional public schools are reluctant to do that.
I think that's a good topic for the next segment is things that can change. I mean, that sounds like an amazing thing. They eliminated all the administrators and took the duties on themselves, and they made more money. I mean, that makes sense because that seems to be the way my school used to be, was you had a lot of teachers pulling double duty in that regard, and they made more money. Let's continue with Sarah Montalbano, our guest. One final segment here, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Hey, I took a test. There's a pinch of intellect in there somewhere. I don't know what it is. It's small, but welcome back to the program. Sarah Montalbano is our guest. She is the education analyst from the Alaska Policy Forum, and she joins us today. Today, this final segment, I guess we'll talk about solutions. Sarah was just telling us, I think the takeaway from all this, Sarah, is kind of what you said, in that there was a golden opportunity in the pandemic to see what they were doing wrong and to make those changes when they came back, right? But instead, they're basically just continuing on more of the same. And you mentioned solutions like some places. You just mentioned a school in New York where the district decided to eliminate a lot of the overhead and have the teachers pick up a lot of that work. So now it's mostly teachers, but they're all making 100 and something thousand. Give me the details here.
Absolutely. The New York City charter school that I'm talking about, note first that it's a charter school. So it has the flexibility to do these things that maybe traditional public schools don't. But this charter school actually said, we're not going to have administrator only positions. We're going to really cut down on that. And every teacher is going to take on a little bit of this administrative work. And then we'll be able to raise our starting salaries. And it actually gets close to $120,000 for a starting teacher. That's an incredible salary for teachers. I think any teacher would love to have that. But they're all taking on these different roles. The third grade math teacher is also the principal. So you're able to do a lot of these things in a flexible model. And that's one of the reasons I'm such a fan of school choice. And, the charter schools that we've seen, the correspondence schools here in Alaska, they all have the flexibility to do things differently.
Well, and we should be looking to do things differently. I mean, I just said it earlier, and I've been saying it for years, but that's not going to stop me from keep saying it, which is that something is fundamentally broken in our education system nationally, that there's something just fundamentally flawed because we're spending more than ever, and we're having pathetic results. Here in the state, we're at the 48th and 49th percentile. Internationally, the U.S. education system doesn't do great. It's in the middle to the lower middle of the pack against all the other industrialized nations, and yet we spend more than almost anybody. So something is wrong, and we've got to. The first step to you have to admit that there's a problem, right? To being able to fix the problem is to admit that there is a problem, and that's just something that we aren't hearing.
I agree. And we had such a golden opportunity with this pandemic. And I think what we saw was just basically traditional public schools shifted and tried to do the same thing online through laptops, through computers. And then now that we're back, we're doing traditional public school still, and we're still, bringing in those laptops when it's convenient. And that's just not the opportunity being used all that well. I think we had some really interesting opportunities to build, online forward curriculums, things that are actually supposed to be taken online, things that measure, your mastery of a subject rather than counting how many hours you've sat in a classroom listening to a teacher talk about it. There's just all sorts of interesting things that we could have done that we're not seeing, except where there is, freedom and school choice, where you're able to say, I'd like to build a micro school. I would like to do, so many different things. It's amazing what we've seen across the US,
Right.
and that people are still sticking with it.
Yeah. Teacher shares, pandemic now they call them learning pods. They don't call them pandemic pods anymore, but learning pods. And yet you've got people like Randy Weingarten, who is the American Teacher Federation president. She's the union of all unions, right? She posts on Twitter the other day, why are our kids going to homeschooling? And of course, because there's been a 30% increase across the country in homeschooling since the pandemic. And those are people who stuck. I mean, at one point, I think 50% increase was the number. And then some people have ratcheted back. But she's like, well, why? What? Because, so we need more anti-bullying initiatives in school because somebody was talking about being bullied and that's why they're homeschooling their kids. Or we need more of this or we need more of that. Never looking at the real reason, which of course was a better education, more freedom, and a curriculum that they can choose.
Absolutely. That reason piece, I saw it and I skimmed it and I thought you were going to talk about it. So I have not had a chance to really go through it and dig deep, but I was glad I predicted that. Yeah, I think it's a really obvious thing for a lot of people because they were forced into homeschooling. Maybe those people who thought, hey, I can't do this, they had to do it. They had to figure things out during the pandemic. And then once they stopped, they say, hey, well, I kind of liked it the way it was. And I'm able to go back, or I'm able to continue forward with something that's homeschooling, but actually planned out, something I can think about and be deliberate about. So I think that's just an incredible part of this, is just parents wanting the flexibility and knowing that they can do it.
Well, and I think the education industry, their kind of whole planning backfired because they've been telling parents for years, oh, you're just not smart enough to homeschool. You're not a professional educator. Homeschooling is hard. Why would you do? And then all of a sudden people were forced into it because there was no other option. And all of a sudden they discovered, well, wait, this wasn't as hard as we thought. And some people found that their children just absolutely thrived in it. We've had listeners comment in the chat room in the first year or so of the pandemic. We had several different listeners that came in and said, yeah, my kids are loving the homeschool. In fact, one guy said in right about now, November, December, he said, my daughter has just finished the entire school year. She did it all. She did it all in like 3 months. She loved it. She got it done and she's ahead. We're going to keep doing it. And I think that was definitely a milestone moment when people figured out it wasn't as hard as they were told.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to hear these stories. And I got to tour in DC a couple months ago, a micro school. And so, there's maybe 20 or 30 kids, and our tour guide were the children. They were, a sixth grader who was taking us around and telling us how our school works and, their achievement-based system. So they worked at their own pace. They were using Khan Academy for math. They were doing a whole bunch of things. And these teachers weren't called teachers. They were called guides. And they were, helping students through. But what struck me the most was just the confidence and excitement this kid had about learning. And that was just amazing to see. And I think as a parent, that would make me light up if my kid, who was not excited about going to school, suddenly became interested in learning again. That's just the kind of stories that I love to see.
Well, right. I mean, where is the love of learning?
Yeah.
Right. Look, I'm a semi-intelligent guy, right? I mean, it wasn't that I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was bored in school. I did not it was irritating to me because it didn't go at my pace, right? I wanted to, I was supposed to shut up and sit down and do my thing and do all this kind of, but I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn, but I wanted to learn at my pace, not at the pace of the slowest student in the class. Okay. Be like, oh, okay, I got it. Oh, wait, we need to spend 2 more days on this. I already got it, and that's the thing. Micro schools or homeschooling or these other things where it's done at the student's pace rather than as the, again, the class being subjugated to the slowest learner in the class. That's a whole different deal. That's a whole different feel of what we have today.
I was much the same way, and no matter where the teacher aims in that group, if they aim for the lowest denominator or the middle, they're still losing kids on either side. So I really do love the fact that, school choice of all stripes is able to help that kid learn at their own pace and learn what they're interested in. So that is one of the reasons I just love it. And we see so many successful models coming out of the pandemic. But traditional public schools aren't absorbing all of the best of that.
So micro schools, and that's a concept that I haven't heard of before. Basically, what was this? Was this a private thing? Was this a charter deal? What was a micro school?
Yeah, this school in particular was a private school, so there was some tuition fee. It's actually lower than most of the private schools in the area, and they take a really small group of students. There was an interview process for not only the parents but the students too, to get them in and see, like, are you ready to learn like this? Because it's not for everyone. And it was just really fascinating. There was, kids in all of these different grades learning together, learning side by side. Just there's a couple rooms. There's a small library, just a library room, and the elementary kids and the middle school kids just kind of separated and went off to do their own thing. And the teachers help them occasionally as they need it, but for the most part, they're driving their own learning. So micro schools don't all look like that, but generally what they have in common is a really small class size, maybe 20, 30, 40 kids.
With just a handful of teachers or guides in this case, kind of overseeing the process from the various grades. I mean, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think I've never articulated it before, like I just did with my own schooling experience, because that's exactly what it was. I got it. Once I got it, I was like, I'm off in la la land because we're waiting for everybody else to get it, or the slowest student to get it. And that's what I think is more frustrating than anything else. You don't look forward to it because you're like, okay, I get it. I want to move on. I want to move on to something new. Can we move forward? And a self-paced learning style would definitely be beneficial. But again, that's something that it's not even a component of the new system. Final thoughts, Sarah. We're down to the 30-second mark here.
This has been such a wide-ranging discussion. It's hard to pull it all together. What I would say is that we need to be thinking about and learning from these innovative models here in Alaska and elsewhere, and thinking about how to bring the best of it to our traditional public schools, and how do we spend this money more effectively. We need to make these commitments.
Sarah, thank you so much. Folks, we're out of time. Hour 2 dead ahead. Sorry, I ran us right up to the clock there, man. I was just like, so now I'll give you the final bite at the apple. You can summate, because this was a wide-ranging discussion. But we have to have more of these. We have to have more discussions about this. And we've got to get somebody who's inside the system to acknowledge it's not working as intended. That's the thing. It's not working, and just throwing more money at it is not going to solve the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, Sarah, I'll give you the floor here for the last couple minutes. You can summate and do everything else.
As an aside, I would love to talk about pensions in more depth, and in just other news. I'm now the policy manager, so I am not only an education expert now. If you'd ever like to have me on about healthcare or state fiscal issues, love to talk about it.
Okay, you're booked.
Exactly. Well, will you have me back?
Yeah, you'll be booked. You'll be booked repeatedly. You'll be sick of my emails.
Yes.
Go ahead.
It's so interesting to think about just all of these different things, and it does fill me with hope. And what I would say is just we're talking too much about the amount of money, and we're not talking about how we make it matter. And that's my problem, is that we can as a society have these in-depth discussions like we do. We have these every Monday. We have fantastic engagement from your audience. They're thinking critically. They're asking questions. They're volunteering their own ideas. And I think, our public discourse can rise to this level where it's not just about a dollar amount. We can talk about these things more seriously and take
Right.
into account everyone.
Right. No, absolutely. I agree. Although Brian is a little cynical. Brian here says maybe it is working as designed, supporting Big Ed instead of the students. And we've touched on that briefly this morning, Sarah, but I'm becoming more and more convinced that really this has become more about the education industrial complex than it is about the children, right? I mean, California was a prime example of that when it was shut down. They would only reopen if they got their social justice things met and some other demands that the teachers union in California was making. And at some point you looked at it and went, wait, that's not for the children. That's not about kids. And I think that's been a bigger part of the problem.
There were some incredible writers in those union contracts, and I think other places have done really good reporting on what's in them. What I would say is that, it is working as it was built, but consider that it was built to solve different problems than what we have today. Teachers' unions first came about because women teachers were coming into the common school model. They were being trained in large numbers, and they found out, we're not being paid as much as the men. And so they got these unions, these rigid step scales in order to ensure they were being paid fairly. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like that is just we're not seeing that discrimination. We're not seeing, any discrimination that's not solved with existing, federal laws towards that end. So it's working as it was designed, but what it's designed for isn't what we're looking for anymore.
Right. Well, exactly. And somebody said earlier, talked about how the Prussian model at the time was a great idea. And, like you said, when when they were looking for industrial factory workers, this model may have been perfect, but they have failed to adapt to the times. And that's part of the problem today is that we would value children who had more accurate thought and more critical and analytical and creative skills than those that can just simply read off their times tables or give you a detailed instructions on how to press a license plate or whatever it is that they're building. And that's part of the problem is that we've refused to move on from that.
I agree completely. You've summed it so well. It's just we're not built for this, and it's comforting to me to look back at the historical context of these things and to say, well, okay, it's not that, it was built to be malicious towards our kids. It's not built so that it hurts children, but, it made sense for the time and now it doesn't make sense anymore. And we need to think about, are we reforming things or are we transforming them? Because I think personally, we should be working towards transformation. We can try restarting things. Reforming too often just means tinkering at the edges. Are we doing, curriculum changes? Are we thinking about, regardless, we should be thinking about the ways to bring in these school choice options and make them common and parents knowledgeable about them. And so that every child has this customized education that works best for them.
I couldn't agree more. And again, that whole idea of the love of learning, like you said, talking about students who are excited about their learning, who are excited about their school and love that, we just don't see that as much anymore. And it's because we've forgotten that there's supposed to be a discovery aspect of this whole thing, that there's supposed to be an excitement. And that's just kind of been not out of every student by any means. You can't paint with a broad brush, but it's definitely an issue that I think needs to be addressed for sure. I mean, a classical education can go a long way to fixing a lot of this.
I agree. And one of the reasons I loved this young lady who was our tour guide, in part because she was a young graduate. So I was seeing a lot of myself in that too. But it was just fantastic to see just the excitement and pride in the school that she loved learning through this model.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Well, Sarah, you've just volunteered yourself for a whole lot of interviewing with the new policy. So you're now a policy analyst instead of just the education policy analyst.
Yeah, I'm the policy manager, so I get to do everything.
Wow. Okay. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. And I recommend you go out to my Facebook page at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show to fill out your recipe, and maybe you could get a chance to win a bag of coffee and a coffee mug. See?
I'd love it.
You got to share that. You got to share that pecan recipe. My wife she'll be dying to make that this year.
My
All
dad
right.
would be tickled.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you coming on board. Thanks for being part of it, as always.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, folks, that brings us to the top of the hour. We're ready to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Going to reset. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome back to the program. It is that was a fast hour one, wasn't it? That was a fast hour. That's how this whole week is going to go, folks. Welcome to Thanksgiving week. And it is it's just oof, man, it's gonna be fast. Tomorrow on the program, Brad Keithley and Chris Story will be joining us. We're going to talk with them about pretty much all different kinds of stuff. It's going to be a fun discussion for sure. And we're going to talk with them about the weekly top three and then get our weekly uplift as well. Maybe we'll bring Chris on for a little bit of discussion on freedom and free thought, which I am going to touch on a bit this morning as well. Also on Wednesday, two different guests I'm working on right now. One is Senator Mike Shower. We're going to see if he may be working. I don't know yet. I have not confirmed with him yet, but Wednesday is his normal go round. And then also working on another person to talk about modern day scams. We'll see if we can get them on as well. There was something else possible. I got a lot of stuff happening this week. A reminder, we will be off on Thursday and Friday, of course, for the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll be returning back to the airwaves on next Monday, a week from today. So Thursday and Friday, don't be listening for me because I will be cooking a turkey. I'll be cooking a turkey. That's my job. My job is to cook that turkey while my wife and my daughter go and do the rest of it. It'll be I'm so looking forward to all the good food and probably maybe a Star Wars marathon or something. I don't know. My son's going to be over and we're probably going to we're just going to watch. We're going to watch stuff until our eyeballs fall out, maybe play some board games and just have a good time together. It's going to be an amazing time. I'm really, really looking forward to it. All right. In this hour today, we've got just you and me. We're going to have some discussions here. I have gone ahead and open up the phone lines at 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. If you would like to sound off, I'd love to hear from you to see what you have to say. Feel free to dial in. And if you want to talk about the education thing that we just talked about, feel free to plonk in on that. If there's something else that you would love to discuss, I'd love to hear that as well. again, smile and dial. Let's get it going on here. And we'll see what's going on. A little bit cold across the state right now. It's Jeannie is reporting 7 below down on the peninsula. Right now, it's about 3 degrees below zero here at the old Radio Ranch, and we're expecting a blizzard. Yep, blizzard conditions are in effect from 9 a.m. this morning until 6 a.m. tomorrow. In the Matsu Valley, 70 miles an hour winds is what they're expecting, 50 to 70 miles an hour. Blowing and drifting snow likely in exposed areas, and more. Hazardous conditions could impact the morning and evening commutes. Very strong winds could cause damage to power lines and everything else. So go shake those trees near your power lines to make sure they don't have any more snow on them. I had my son go around and whack every tree around here with a shovel until we could get some of that snow off. It's been pretty brutal. But then it's going to be raining down here in the South Central area on Thanksgiving Day. That's what they're asking for right now. 39 degrees, big chance of rain. So you can't make this stuff up, man. This is the weather. This is the winter that just keeps on giving. Absolutely. All right, I got some stuff I want to talk about, but I see that we've got a phone line in the chat room here, a phone call, so we're going to go over there and see what you guys have to say. So let's get started, and we'll just start by taking some phone calls. And if there's anything else you want to chat about, I'm open today. We're getting to that end of the year where I'm open to almost any topic here. So let's go over to the phones and see what you have to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. It's Kevin McCabe. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. McCabe. How are you, my friend? What's happening?
Not much. I just wanted to remind folks, I don't know, I think Angie sent you something about our House Transportation Committee meeting today at 1 p.m. in the LIO, and focused on the railroad and Point McKenzie rail extension and the Northern Rail extension. So decided to try to hold a meeting here in the Anchorage LIO before session so that folks have a better chance to attend. So I'm hoping to get maximum attendance.
And what is going to be covered, Kevin, on this? I mean, you're talking about Point McKenzie Rail, Northern Rail Extension. Give us some details as to what does that mean for us? What is the discussion going to revolve around with those projects?
Yeah, so I dropped a link in the chat room. There's the railroad has gone out and got a new estimate on what it's going to cost to complete Point McKenzie rail extension, and they want to present that as well as sort of a report on how that would work. And the Matsu Borough is also going to be there, and they're going to talk about the Point McKenzie rail extension and Port McKenzie. And it will also be, it's a 3-hour meeting. It will be open for public testimony afterwards, and it will be available on Teams and available to call in. So all the normal, we're holding it in the LIO so that all the normal electronic means of attending the meeting are available. And you can listen in, you can call in for public testimony afterwards about anything railroad related or anything Port McKenzie or PMRE, the Point McKenzie rail extension, anything that's on your mind with those, that would be good to hear. So,
and can you remind people
reason for holding this right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you remind people what the Point McKenzie rail extension does? I mean, I kind of understand it in vague terms, but can you explain what that means when they're talking about the Point McKenzie extension and Port Mac?
Sure. The Point McKenzie rail extension is a half-built, it's a 32-mile-long extension that runs from Port McKenzie up to Houston. And it is, the state put $184 million into it, the state and the borough. And it's not complete. It has no rails on it. There's 7 miles of rail bed or 7.2 miles that has yet to be constructed, although it's cleared and the rights of way are there. And then we stopped. For whatever reason, the state and the borough and the railroad stopped building it 7-8 years ago. And so we have this half-completed project. And now, of course, we have all these issues with natural gas and resource development and all of that. So it's our idea that maybe we should complete it, but we want to hear from the public. Right now, it's the world's most expensive snowmobile trail at $184 million. So Alaska is a resource development state, and we can't develop our resources if we don't have the transportation to get them somewhere, to Tidewater or to the people.
Were they trying to say, and were they saying that Point Mac was the alternative to the Port of Alaska as an alternate in case there was emergencies, or was this going to be a separate thing where some of it could be offloaded? Was that the plan? What was the overall justification for building a hundreds of millions of dollars of rail spur out there versus in town?
Well, yeah, so that's exactly right. There's a couple of reasons. Port McKenzie is a bit of a different port the way it's structured right now, and it fills a bulk container, bulk loading, has a bulk loading ability that the Port of Alaska and Anchorage doesn't have. Port McKenzie has 90 feet. It's 90 feet deep, so at low tide, there's 30 feet under the keel of a Panamax freighter. And the Port of Alaska can't even take a Panamax freighter. So between the two of them, the synergies for Alaska would be awesome. But also there's the resiliency of, if something happens to either port in an earthquake or something, that the other one will be able to, take up the slack, if you will. So the Port of Alaska is built on an earthquake substrate, and they're trying to fortify against that. They've spent, millions of dollars fixing that, and that's right as it should. There's a big infrastructure over there. Port McKenzie's a bit different. It's built on a different substrate, and we have 14.5 square miles of land at Port McKenzie that's available, where Port of Alaska has a bit less. I think they have 300 plus, almost 400 acres. So sort of a different land structure and different substrate. So it all boils down to, hey, now we have the redundancy and the resiliency of a equal port, but in a separate sort of area that may not be as affected by earthquakes and that sort of thing. So I think it's necessary if Alaska is going to continue to grow our resources, and that's sort of the direction we're moving.
And the expansion of the port, or the expansion of the railhead itself, this would connect it to the overall. This 32-mile connection would connect it to the overall rail system.
Sure, that's correct. And there's a couple of saltwater ports in the United States that do not have rail. The Port of Miami and the Port of Hawaii don't have rail connected to them. Long Beach and Galveston are close. They have rail that's close. They're both a mess because you're having to truck things to the rail from the port. And we think that a saltwater port here at Port McKenzie, number one, it'll relieve a lot of the congestion and traffic and problems on the Parks Highway going north to Fairbanks and into interior Alaska. We can hook right up to the rail spur from Port McKenzie and unload a ship and run it on the rail instead of running it up the parks. So yeah, we think the rail is a key piece of putting Port McKenzie on the map, so to speak, and that's why we're moving forward. And that was the original thought as well.
And so this will give us an update on the newest cost estimates for what it's going to cost. What was the original cost of this spur line, Kevin?
The original cost was under $300 million, and we spent 184 of that, and there was 120 left to, and this was 8 years ago, it was 120 million left to finish it. I think the estimates have climbed significantly since then. I think when I first took office, it was 140 million to complete, and a year ago, the CEO of Alaska Railroad told me it was 190 million. So I'm sure it's north of that at this point. And it's certainly going to take some sort of a public-private partnership to put it together. And it's just, this is kind of an opening meeting to explore how that would look.
All right, so it's going to be today, 1 p.m. at the LIO in Anchorage, right? The LIO in Anchorage at 1 p.m. today. Folks can participate on Teams and other things. Is there a link that they can go to get all the information and how to contact and all that?
Sure, I dropped it into the chat room. I can do that again. I have a MailChimp out and Facebook posts all over the place, but I can drop the link into the chat room. The LIO is on the corner of Benson and Minnesota. I think it's 1500 Benson is if I recall. It's in the there's a bank in that building. I can't remember which one, but it's available for the public. There'll be plenty of seats. Lots of people. You can attend if you've got nothing else to do, or you can call in and listen on Teams, and I'll repost that link, and all the numbers and stuff will be there.
Okay, and it's all up on your Facebook page as well, so folks can go there to get that information as well. Is that right? And it's on your Facebook page as well.
I don't know. Yes, I can put it on my Facebook page.
Okay. All right. Well, Kevin McCabe, thank you for calling in and giving us the heads up on this. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, folks. That lines us out here for this section. We got more coming up, more phone calls and discussions. It's all dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. In the break right now, I'm going to answer my phone because I've got a vehicle that has to be towed, and it's the insurance company that's coming to tow the vehicle. And so hold the line. We'll be right back. That's what's going to happen. Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on here. The phone wouldn't work properly. 2 phone calls while I was in the middle of the show. Damn. There you go. All right. What else we got here? Kevin just dropped the link to the chat room for the House meeting and everything else. And we're all good. We're all good to go. What else? Sorry, I'm going back through here, the comments. Batten down the hatches. Wind is starting, says Terry. Really? All right. I hope our ports are greatly emphasizing cybersecurity, says Teresa. And then Jim reminds us that in the interior, the railroad has a bridge to nowhere as well. Yeah, remember how important that bridge was? And now it's just basically doing nothing. What's the projected cost per mile on the Port McKenzie rail extension? I don't know, 32 miles at $300 million. Well, that sounds like about $10 million a mile. And that was the old number. So that sounds about right, huh? Again, the most expensive snow machine trail in history right now because there's no rails on the track. Did they build it? Did he say that there was only 7 miles of rail bed built? They spent $180 million on 7 miles of rail bed, and there's no rails on it. That seems like a lot. That seems like a lot. If they've only done 7 miles of it. This is what happens when we overthink things. I'll be honest with you. This is kind of the whole, in this country during World War II, we built, I don't know how many dozens and dozens and dozens of airfields and roadways and everything else because it was important. And now it's like we can't get anything done, Oh, no, 7.2 left to be developed. Okay, so they did 24 miles of roadbed, 23 miles of roadbed for $180 million. 7 miles remaining, and then they place the rails on it. Well, you've gone most of the way there. You might as well finish it at this point. Projected cost per mile, about 13 cents per dividend, says Anthony. It's a lot more than that, my friend. They're talking about it's going to be another $150 million or something. But Kevin said that they had $300 million budgeted. So I'm assuming they still have $130 million left. Now they're going to ask for more on top of that. This project's going to end up costing $500 million by the time it's done for 32 miles of rail, which, I guess that's typical, huh? Guess that's typical. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. Okay. Welcome back. About 200. We were just talking about the cost of this rail extension. It's only about $240 per dividend, says Donna Ardwin. That's what the cost is right now. $240 per dividend to get that rail line finished. No big deal. No big deal. And now Randy's asking if you should donate his uncashed PFD check to help out with the completion of the Point McKenzie Spur. You should just mail me that check. Just endorse it and mail it over to me, Randy. I will make sure that money is well spent. So I just send it right over. I got some starving kids in Africa that will definitely be able to use that money for sure. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, hour 2 of the Monday edition for this Thanksgiving Day week. And yeah, we're just kind of letting our hair down, talking about different things. Phone lines are open if you would like to sound off at 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150, powered by our friends over there at Satellite West. You could find them at satellitewest.com if you want to go over there and get squared away. I saw this story and I have some mixed feelings about it for a couple reasons. I am all for keeping sexually explicit material out of the hands of grade schoolers. High schoolers, I'm not necessarily as worried about, but grade schoolers for sure. And so now I just happened to see the list of books that are getting banned. There was 56 books removed from the library of the Matsu School District. some of which I agree with. Others I'm like, really? I mean, books like, The Invisible Man and Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse Five, and some of these other books, and I'm like, that's what? That's not, I don't understand. Anyway, there are some other books on here. I think that the problem, this is my problem with the whole thing. I am all for keeping, like I said before, sexually explicit material out of the hands of kids. But some of these books, I gotta wonder. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini is a book that probably challenges some kids, probably would challenge some ideas and some thoughts, but it is an excellent book. And this is not clear. The reason I found out about this, by the way, is because the ACLU has filed a lawsuit against the Matsu School Borough for removing these books. The ACLU, I guess I should say, and the Northern Justice Project. But some of these books, I got questions. The books like, again, Fahrenheit or Slaughterhouse Five. I keep wanting to say Fahrenheit 451, but it's Slaughterhouse Five. The Lovely Bones. What was the other one? The Invisible Man was one. The Handmaid's Tale, which is the Margaret Atwood book, which is, dystopian and everything else. The whole Court of Thorn and Roses series, they actually had those all in the library. And while those are more mature, they're not necessarily, I don't know. I just, I don't want now Sex, an Uncensored Guide by Nicole Hassler. Yeah, I think that necessarily should not be in the library for the grade 1 through 6ers and things like that. There are just some interesting choices here on these book choices for being pulled out. Now, I'm not familiar with every book that's on here by any means. But when you start talking about pulling, some of these books, I mean, Judy Blume book that's been there forever, The Kite Runner and Slaughterhouse Five. I mean, those, I got questions. Why are we now in this library specifically? They're not eliminating The Invisible Man, but there was another article about some schools that have eliminated that book. Catch 22 was the other one. Heller Catch 22. Of Mice and Men and some of these other books. And I'm like, a lot of these books are on the 100 books you need to read before you die list. Now, does that mean that they're necessarily appropriate for grade school kids? Maybe not. I'm trying to remember. It's been years since I read Slaughterhouse Five, but I don't remember it being anything other than a moving book that made me think. That's what it should be about. But, if you're trying to push an agenda, if there's, like I said, the one that caught my eye here was Sex, an Uncensored Guide. That's the name of the book. Why that would be in a school library, I have no idea. But these are the books that are being eliminated right now, or have been eliminated from the school district. And maybe some of you have read some of these. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want to make sure that as we look at this, books in school, the ideas in these books should be challenging to people, right? There should be some challenge to all this stuff. You should always have your ideas challenged. That's how you become bigger. That's how you become a better in your beliefs. That's how it makes you stronger. Oh, Wicked. That was the other one. The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. That's the one that they made the theater production out of and everything. So I guess I don't understand how, unless there's, I don't know. I get a little uncomfortable with throwing out things in whole cloth. I guess let me put it that way. I don't know the context of all of these books. Several of the books that I read, the excerpts of some of these books, which I don't recognize the names here on this, but yeah, some of those are definitely not kid friendly, and I wouldn't want in there. But when you're talking about some of these classics, I don't understand. Of course, I was reading novels as a kid. We were talking with Sarah Montalbano about schooling earlier, and how I was bored. My teacher used to laugh in my English class because I would bring in. I would burn through a 400 or 500 page novel in just a couple days. Right? I mean, I love to read, and I love the stories, and I love that kind of stuff. So I was reading adult books when I was in 9th grade. I was reading, full on novels and everything else, but I don't remember ever reading things that were explicit. But just some of the names that popped up on here just kind of made me scratch my head going, who had a problem with it? Who had a problem with Slaughterhouse-Five? Right? Who had a problem with that? Who had a problem with Wicked? Some of the books that I'm familiar with, The Court of Thorn and Roses. I mean, my daughter's read that. My wife's read that. I mean, who had a problem with that? This fantasy novel. Maybe there was some salacious stuff in it that I just was not aware of, but should there be a cutoff? Should there be a delineation between what's in a high school library versus what's in a grade school K through 12 library or a middle school library? But again, holding back some of the classics like The Invisible Man or Slaughterhouse-Five seems to be, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It just does not make any sense. But it is what it is. But apparently the ACLU now and the Northern Justice Project are out there. They're going to be banging the drum on this, and they're going to try and get all this stuff turned around. I suppose I should go read synopsises of all these books just so that I can speak about it. I could speak about it a little bit here. But books like The Kite Runner and other things, I find it surprising that some of these books showed up on the list. And maybe somebody in the chat room knows more about this than I do. Maybe they've been following this a little bit more, or somebody can call in and tell me how wrong I am on that. But somehow I just can't see that Kurt Vonnegut's novel should end up on that list for whatever reason. And I guess this is another reason why parents should be paying close attention to what their kids are doing. This is just one more reason for parental involvement and knowing what their kids are reading and what they have going on. I was always interested in what my kids were reading because who knows, they may have read something that I wanted to read as well. I mean, I don't know. I just consume books. I'm very avaricious when it comes to reading good stories and things like that. But I just, again, some of the names that popped up on these lists made me kind of go, oh, what? That doesn't make any sense. So this lawsuit anyway is going forward, and they're going to be fighting this out. They say that the books are covered under the constitutional free speech, that all students have the constitutional right to inquire, to study, and to gain a deeper understanding of themselves and their world. As the Supreme Court ruled over 40 years ago, the school library is the principal locus of that freedom. Well, yes, but at the same time, somebody keeps bringing up the whole point of exposing children to pornographic material, which is against state statute. Somebody keeps bringing that up, and I've seen that statute get floated around a little bit as well. So, I mean, I think there has to be kind of a balance there. But at the same time, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess is what I'm saying on that right now. Anyway, I saw that. I had to talk about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't recognize most of the titles on this list, but I recognize some. And I guess I have questions. We'll continue this discussion and anything else. Tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story. Thursday is Turkey Day. I'm ready. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right. Let me go back and read what you guys have been talking about here. Yeah, I don't understand why you would Lovely Bones. I don't understand that one. And again, Slaughterhouse 5. Okay, I'm going through here. My Christmas shopping is done, says Denise. Way to brag about it, Denise. Jeez, making me feel inadequate here. Let's see. Can we save the smut and gutter issues for January? I don't know what he's talking about. Okay. I'm with you. Unsure how Slaughterhouse 5 and the Unabridged Guide to Butt Stuff wind up on the same list. That's true. Although I don't think that one was actually one. I mean, I know that that's actually the title of one of the books that was out there that was being decried by one of the things here. Hold on a second here. Let me pull up the. Here we go. Let me pull the list. I killed the list. I closed it. Let me see. Yeah, I didn't see that one up there. The one that caught my eye was the Uncensored Guide to Sex, which I thought, again, probably not appropriate for a school thing. Donna said, I have read many of those amazing books. I wouldn't recommend many of them for grade schoolers. So that's true. I mean, some of them have got very tough discussions on it. Slaughterhouse 5 is high school. Yeah. It is kind of an older topic. I mean, it's about World War II and I mean, it's tough. Those books would still be in the borough library, says Barbara. Yes, they would still be in the borough library. This is just the school libraries. Lovely Bones was just a thriller. It was homicide. Yes, it was. I was discusses with radicals for banning To Kill a Mockingbird, said Teresa. Yes, exactly. I was like, To Kill a Mockingbird, Slaughterhouse 5, The Invisible Man. Why? I'm in my 60s, says Denise. In the 70s, my mother, a school librarian, got to experience a community and school board book banning. The book was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. She simply set up a sign-in, a signature sheet, and a phone call for approval from the parents. That would not be bad. Catch-22 is definitely high school. Yeah. Yeah, Catch-22, definitely, I think, a high school book. Parents can ban books through Power School, says Melissa, that you don't want your kids to check out. Power School is some kind of parent portal. Is that right, Melissa? Donna said The Kite Runner is violent and has a violent sexual attack. An important book for adults, but disturbed me for days after reading it. Yeah, I have not read The Kite Runner. I've read the synopsis of it, but I have not read the actual book. But I mean, again, it's a book that definitely challenges your understanding of how things were. Prime rib for Thanksgiving, says Chris. Ooh, you'd like to live on the edge, my friend. That sounds delicious. We did prime rib for not Thanksgiving. We did prime rib for Christmas here a couple of years ago. It's the first time we'd ever done that, and that was a lot of fun. I have read excerpts of the books that they want out of school, said Terry. They are pure evil, not the one Dukes is talking about. Public libraries, up to them. Yeah, I mean, some of the excerpts of some of these books, which I don't see on these lists, like I said, I couldn't read them on the air. They were that salacious. But yeah, want to bet? Brian says, you want to bet there'd be objection to free to choose, the law, road to serfdom, Constitution of Liberty, or anthem? That's a good question. All right, hold on a second here. Now my phone is ringing. All right, welcome back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We're returning now here to the final segment of the show, where we got the phone lines open at 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150 is the phone number. Melissa in Fairbanks just told us that parents can ban books through Power School. They don't ban them. They basically put them on a restricted list so that their kids can't check them out. She said parents can ban books through Power School that you don't want your kids to check out, which is a parents portal. So they would get notification. The library would say, sorry, I can't check this out to you. So that would be also a good way to go around it. But again, while a lot of these books that we just talked about is, these are adult books, and they are, they've got some adult themes. I don't think it always has to do with, like I said, salaciousness or anything else. But I guess many of these books should just be, restricted to the high school level. I think that probably would make sense. But anyway, we can get off that topic. I was surprised at some of the books that were on the list. Let me just put that out there. I was surprised that was what's going on. What else is happening? Well, there was a shooting last night a double homicide outside of Walmart in Anchorage. I mean, oof, man, that's the that's the hit list that just keeps the people keeps them on going. You know what I mean? They are there's no word. It happened literally right in front of the front doors of Walmart, and there is one suspect at large, although they said that they don't expect that this was they said it was an isolated incident. The circumstances of the incident are under investigation, but officers have cause to believe that this is an isolated incident, said the police. This all took place about 5 p.m. last night on the Old Seward Highway on 88th Avenue, just south of the Diamond Center Mall. The circumstances are still under investigation, know exactly what's going on. Interesting that everything was so populated and it happened right outside the main entrance. That just makes you go, wow, okay. That's a problem for sure. Another reason, I guess, to go forth armed down in the big city down there for something like that to happen. Not that, I don't know if you could have done anything, but I'd at least like to have the ability to fight back. So that was the other, one of the other big stories. And then this one that just came through late yesterday as well. Attorney General Treg Taylor this week issued new guidance on the discussion of gender in public schools and access to books related to sexuality in public and school libraries, drawing criticism from public education and library advocates. Taylor, his new decision on Thursday, issued a new interpretation of an existing law that requires public schools to notify parents or guardians of any content involving, quote, human reproduction or, quote, sexual matters. Taylor's interpretation expands the statute to include instructions related to gender identity. This is according to the Irish Samuels over at the ADN. The statute is meant to allow parents to opt their child out of instructions related to sexual education. The new interpretation will require teachers to also notify parents when they are discussing gender identity, giving parents the opportunity to opt their children out of that content. In a letter to Education Commissioner Dina Bishop, Treg Taylor said, gender identity coursework necessarily involves topics related to reproductive organs. The purpose of the statute is to advance parents' rights to be involved in the education of their child, which notice about gender identity coursework facilitates. The existing statute stems from a law adopted back in the legislature in 2016 when Governor Dunleavy was there, and he was a key supporter of the bill. Dunleavy last year proposed a new bill that would further curtail instructions on sex and gender in public schools, and that measure would have banned all sexual education before fourth grade and explicitly required students to obtain parental permission, which, again, I don't necessarily see the problem in that right now. Also, of course, they talked about the parental notification when it comes to books of a sexually explicit nature as well. And that is the other interesting part of this, which kind of ties back into what I was just saying. He also warned schools and public libraries in a separate letter against allowing children to access books that have graphic depictions of sexual content. He said you should conduct a review that takes steps to ensure the organizations are not violating the law. In response, the public library spokesperson for Anchorage said that the library will continue to operate under the guidance of their current collections management policy and in consultation with the Department of Law at the municipality, which sounds a lot like go pound sand is what it sounds like. Anyway, this is where we're at. We're in the middle of the culture wars. There's no doubt about it. Again, asking myself, why would you not why would you not pull your kids from public school if this was a problem for you? If you don't have an issue with it, great, continue on. If you have an issue with it, why would you just not take that education into your own hands and deal with it yourself? Right? And why would you not be paying attention to what your kids are doing in the libraries as well? I like what Melissa said. I didn't realize that there was a power portal where the parents, a power school, which is a parent portal, where you could go in and no, can't check out those books. Can't do that. Not old enough to do that yet. I find that very easy. That would be a very easy fix for me in that regard. I would love to see more parents get involved in that way as well. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. If you would like to sound off today, we'd love to hear what you have to say here in the last few moments of the show. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to be joined by Brad Keithley, who's going to come on for the weekly top 3. I'm sure we'll be diving down into a little bit of a tease about what's coming up on the next in the next session, which is just less than 2 months away right now. We're going to be doing on the session here. Hold on a second here, folks. Let me do this real quick here. Sorry about that. Little technical issue. Anyway, Brad Keithley, Chris Story will be joining us. We'll be talking about the good stuff from Chris, and of course, the weekly top 3 from Brad. Not that that's not good stuff as well. Then on Wednesday, we're going to be talking with, I hope, Mike Shower, and again, working on a couple other guests as well. So we're going to do that. And then Thursday and Friday, we are off for the week because of the holiday, which reminds me that the holiday recipe contest is ready to go. The holiday recipe contest is up and running right now over on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/Michael Duke Show if you want to take a look at the recipes that have already been posted. And if you want to post your own recipes, we'd love to give you a chance to win a delicious bag of Beard Curler coffee and a coffee mug, and a 6 o'clock club coffee mug. So just go over there. All you have to do is post your favorite secret family. I recommend the secret family recipes, the one that grandma would turn over in her grave about, giving out. Because, I mean, why not share the joy? Why? I never understood why people are like, oh, I'd give you that recipe, but that's my grandmother's recipe, and we just don't want anybody. Why? Why would you not share the joy, share the love with all those recipes? I mean, I would happily give anybody out there my grandmother's pumpkin pie recipe. I want everybody to enjoy it the way that I do. The barbecue recipe, the bourbon brown sugar ham recipe. I want everybody to enjoy it the same way that I do. So just go post your recipe and then go vote on the various recipes that are out there. On the 19th, we'll see who has the most votes, and then that person will win a bag of Beard Curler coffee and a 6 o'clock club coffee mug, and it will be a very Merry Christmas for everybody involved. Again, all you got to do is go over to facebook.com/Michael Duke Show and sign up there. Just sign up. It would be, it would be a great opportunity. By sign up, I mean put your recipe down there, and then let everybody vote on it. My wife actually put a recipe up there as well. Her candy cane cookies, which are delicious. They're delicious. So go check it out. Again, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. All right, that's it. We're up against it. We're done for the day. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Be safe out there, folks, with all this wind. It's cold, it's windy, it's winter. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Okay, well, that's it, folks. I'm expecting a phone call here in just a second. So I appreciate you guys. Love y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. Go share a recipe. Don't forget to check out the Common Sense Corps. That's how you support the show. We'll be back tomorrow. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Goodbye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.